The absolute division at ADCC was full of breakout performances. Also had a bunch of submissions in it. If you look at the first round, there were 8 matches and 7 of them ended in subs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some highlights first, then go back to the bracket and talk about how everything played out from there. So we'll start with a really cool submission that happened in the Spriggs versus Dot match. So Tim Spriggs catches a guillotine off of a single leg attempt, just gets the high elbow grip here, incredibly tight, gets the tap, ends up finishing from top here. But it looks as though he actually put Dop out with it. So that was one of the, I think definitely of the guillotines that happened at ADCC, this was definitely the most savage of them. So I wanted to include that. Then Gordon Ryan had his first round match against Pedro Moreno. We didn't see a ton of heel hooks out of him in this tournament. I think he got one in his weight division and one in the absolute, but this is the one that he did get in the absolute. So Moreno, while he was trying to pass, ends up getting caught in a single leg X guard. So Ryan from single leg X is eventually going to be able to start attacking the leg. Starts to expose the heel and starts his crank and gets the tap. So first round win for Gordon Ryan. Speaking of heel hooks in the first round, Gary Tonin, just right out the gate, goes for a flying scissor heel hook on Edwin Nashmi. Nashmi was standing pretty tall, so I guess Tonin had seen that from other matches and thought that he'd have a shot at that entry, and worked out real well. Gets in on the leg, gets the heel hook grip, gets a tap. As you can see, the legs getting torqued the wrong way as Nashmi's tapping. Probably the biggest upset of the entire tournament right here. You have Kaynan Zwart, who won the over 99 kilogram division. That is effectively the heavyweight division, versus Lachlan Giles, who lost his first round match to Lucas Lepri in the 77 kilogram division. Now, granted, Lucas Lepri is an absolute legend, so losing to him is nothing to scoff at or nothing to be ashamed of. But he gets this match with Kaynan. And one of the interesting things that I saw a lot with Lachlan Giles is that he oftentimes would be hanging onto legs even after he'd lose control of the knee. Now, if you don't know a whole lot about leg locks, or even if you kind of do, but you're going up against someone who's really good at leg locks, if I'm coaching you, or if you, chances are if you just talk to any jiu-jitsu coach, they'll tell you, all right, look, if you're dealing with a leg locker, you want to make sure that your knee line's clear, and you want to make sure that if it isn't clear, then you turn your heel in towards the ribs rather than outside, because if it's outside, that's when they expose and they're able to crank on the heel hook. But the main thing here is don't let your knee get captured. And as you can see here, Kainan's knee is free. And a lot of times what I saw in these Lachlan Giles matches is that once a guy would have his knee free, his guard would come down. And Giles, even when he would lose the knee, he wouldn't give up on the leg lock. He'd oftentimes just readjust and then attack right away off of the readjust. So what it seemed like in this match is that Kaynan would get comfortable at times when his knee would be free while Lachlan's still working. And then Lachlan finally was able to catch him as a result. So you're seeing, even though he doesn't have control of the knee, he's still working to pummel the leg, still working to get his grip back right, but even still does not have control of the knee here. Now he's starting to get control of it, still fighting for it, and then here he actually does have knee control, so he ends up going from underneath the knee to back on top of it again, gets control of it, goes for the heel hook. Seemed like he was pretty chill for the most part, but finally here, once he feels like he's got the heel hook, then he just grips it and rips it, and he gets the tap from Kaynan. So huge upset there. Moving on to the second round, interesting matchup between teammates with Gordon Ryan and Gary Tonin. Tonin came out as though he didn't seem like he was all too serious about it. I don't know if his expectation was that they were just kind of going to play around for a little while, at least for the first 5 minutes, and then get serious after that, or it just seemed weird what he was doing. But he ends up looking for a knee bar, oddly enough, and gets his back taken off of it, or at least Ryan attempts to roll through and take his back here. Him in like a modified truck position here. Eventually gets to the back though. Loses his hooks, ends up pummeling his way back in, gets the back. And then just the thing that we were seeing a lot from Gordon Ryan in this tournament is that he would he'd stuff his opponent's left arm underneath his left leg. Then he'd have two arms to battle against the one arm. The opponent uses his free right arm to take that arm away. So then it would be his left arm versus the opponent's neck with no protection, and he'd usually win that battle. So here you can see he's stuffing that arm, hooking over the top. Now he's got it isolated. So as you can see, right arm is fighting Gary Tonin's right arm. Left arm is going for the choke. Gets underneath the chin, and gets the tap here. So then we see Lachlan Giles versus Patrick Audio. Now in a couple of Lachlan's matches, the guys seemed like they were willing to exchange with him. They just wanted to make sure their knee was safe. Gaudio, for the most part, actually wasn't trying to exchange with him at all. He's trying to keep his hips back and prevent Giles from getting underneath him. But Giles was just finding creative ways to still get underneath and get a grip on the legs. They see that here. Again, Guardio's trying to keep his hips back as he passes through. Giles did a really good job of retaining guard. It seems like for Giles, he was good even if he lost control of the knee. He'd usually be able to get it back, but even if he didn't get it back and you were able to start passing his guard, he was pretty good about regarding. Now, against Lucas Lepre, that ended up costing him, and it also cost him against Gordon Ryan. But in the Guardio match, it did not cost him. So here he's still trying to dive underneath, find a way to get control. Even if he has to start at the calf, he'll find a way to work his way up. So here you can see he's starting to work his way up, starting to isolate the heel. And here he gets the tap. So again, working his way up the leg. Now he's got control of the knee, has the heel, gets the tap on the heel hook. So then we have the match between the two stars of the absolute division, Gordon Ryan and Lachlan Giles. Gordon Ryan being the winner, Lachlan Giles being the guy who slayed a handful of giants. And Lachlan, even though Gordon's known for his heel hooks, decided, hey, look, so am I. I think I'm going to be able to beat him at his own game. Wasn't able to do so. So Gordon was just very patient on top. Did a good job of making sure that his knee wasn't captured and was just constantly alert to it. But Lachlan was still working. Gordon even threatened some of his own attacks. Here was a bit of a dangerous spot for him, but Gordon rolled through and was able to get out. But again, you can still see, even though Lachlan at times will lose the knee, he'll still hang on to your leg and he'll still keep looking to move forward. But eventually, he ends up getting smashed from half guard. This is the same position that Lucas Lepre ended up using on him as well. So Gordon's going to be able to pass through from here. Lachlan reguards, but on the regard, Gordon then staples on top of the leg here, is able to pass around. I believe this same position was also involved in the Lepre match. But then from there, Gordon's going to be able to work his way to mount. And pretty much from this point on, just constantly looking for attacks. Eventually, he's going to be able to isolate an arm using a gift wrap position. You can see he's starting to work for it here. Starts pushing in, gets the gift wrap, then uses that gift wrap to take the back. Has the back. Isolates the arm, as we were talking about before. Isolates the left arm with his left arm, or with his left leg. Gets it. Now his right arm's going to block Lachlan's right arm. Left arm's going to go underneath for the choke. This time he goes for kind of like a rear naked face crank. But even still, you can still choke someone from here. But even if you don't get the choke, sometimes you can smash the nose. Sometimes you can break the jaw. So whatever pressure he had, it was enough to get the tap on Lachlan Giles. So that moves him on to the finals, where he faced Buchecha. One of the interesting things that I saw in this Buchecha match is that Buchecha seemed to have no desire at all to engage in positions where he could potentially get a leg isolated. So you would see how Gordon and how Lucas Lepre dealt with Lachlan Giles, where they decided they were going to actually like pass through Lachlan's guard. A lot of guys when they're facing leg lockers right now, it seems like at least in ADCC 2019, the answer to the good leg locking of the past wasn't for these guys to build a great leg lock game of their own. It was more so just to avoid those positions. And in doing that, Buchecha really handcuffed himself in this match. So for the most part, he was trying to pass from the outside. He was trying to keep his hips back and prevent Ryan from ever getting his hips underneath him. That didn't entirely work, though. So early in the match, this was the point when there was no scoring. He ends up getting caught in this butterfly sweep here off of a straight armbar. So gets swept over. Ends up rolling through. Ryan gets on top, but no points here because it's in the first couple of minutes. So then Buchecha goes to X guard and is able to stand back up from there. But for the most part, Buchecha was on top here. But if you just look at where his hips are for the most part, where his motion is, as you can see, he's moving back. Ryan's moving forward, even though Ryan was the one who was fighting off his back. Buchecha really just did not want to come in and did not really want to press forward too much because he was worried about getting loaded up and then giving up the leg. Even tried to do this pass here, which I think the announcers were saying was a popular checkmat pass. That didn't really work for him. Again, keeping the hips back. Ryan working for some R drags. But again, just constantly throughout this match, we were just seeing Buchecha keep his hips back. And after an exchange here in overtime, Buchecha just starts adjusting his band. I don't know if he was given the negative point because he was adjusting the band, which was completely unnecessary, or if it was just because of the passivity prior to that. Either way, I don't know that you could argue it either way. So now he's down a negative point. He needs to actually attack now and come back. But even still, he was still pretty tentative, still moving backwards. Was engaging a little bit more in terms of letting Ryan get underneath him, but even still, it just wasn't. It wasn't what we're used to seeing out of Buchecha. But ultimately, as time went on, never really got all that close to anything. Actually went for a heel hook here, which is kind of funny. Gordon Ryan sort of laughs at him. And then Buchecha is laughing back as he gets up on it. But here he tries a Sao Paulo pass. No success with it. And eventually Ryan's able to get the win here and win the division. So that covers it for the championship bracket. Now in the third place match, we had another match for Lachlan Giles. This is for him to actually get on the podium as a 77 kilogram guy going up against a guy who's around 250 pounds and a former black belt world champion at that, Muhammad Ali. And again, he's able to capture another heel hook. And again, sort of like what we saw in the Kaynan Zwart match, it seemed as though Ali felt as though anytime his knee was free, he was safe, when in reality, he really wasn't safe against Giles, and Giles was constantly looking for ways to readjust. So again, we see Giles just right out of the gate, looking to control the leg. And eventually here, doesn't quite have the knee in yet, but is still attacking. We saw Ali sort of like fighting the feet down here, but he wasn't really doing a whole lot to constantly make sure that his knee was out. It seemed like he wasn't paying enough attention to getting his knee free and getting it free for good. He'd sort of just keep it in here. So even in a position like this, it looks as though he does have space to escape. He's fighting the far leg, but he's not doing enough to really like back out and like pull through and get his knee free. And as a result, if you look at the time, this is 8:52. Now we're at 8:50. Giles isolates the leg, goes for the heel hook, has control of the knee, starts rolling through, and gets the tap. So big win here for Lachlan Giles. He gets on the podium. He ends up taking bronze in the absolute and makes a huge name for himself. His student back in 2017, Craig Jones, had a great run in his weight class, beat Leandro Lowe and then Morello Santana, and was able to make a real big name for himself, and was able to build off that over the next 2 years. Was favored to win this year at 88 kilograms. Granted, he did lose to Mateus Diniz in a bit of a weird match where the points he gave up were off of like a lazy takedown attempt where I think he assumed he wasn't going to get penalized for pulling guard. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Lachlan Giles. Obviously, the 77 kilogram division is absolutely stacked. Tough draw this year where he had to face Lepre in the first round. But we'll see if he's able to build off of this and then make a really strong run next time around in 2021. So now let's go through the actual bracket, though, and look at all the matches, not just the highlights of some of the more interesting ones. So first round, we have Buchecha versus Keith Krikorian. Hilarious size discrepancy here with Buchecha being a heavyweight and Krikorian being a 66 kilogram guy or 140 pounder. We had Tex Johnson with a win over John Blank. Sort of a weird one where I think it officially was scored as a straight ankle lock, but it was like once Tex had isolated a leg, Blank had tapped out before a submission attempt was even on. I guess he just assumed that with Tex. He's usually going to finish if he gets in that kind of position, and we saw what happened when Tex went up against Felipe Pena and was able to tear his knee up pretty good. So I guess he just like, I already lost this position, no point in seeing it through. Muhammad Ali gets a heel hook win over John Hansen. Tim Spriggs with that guillotine that we already showed you against Jared Dopp. Gordon Ryan with the heel hook against Pedro Moreno. Tonin with the heel hook over Edwin Najmi. Giles with the heel hook against Kaynan Zwart. And then Patrick Audio beat Mike Perez. In the quarterfinals, Buchecha beat Tex Johnson 3-0. Muhammad Ali beat Tim Spriggs. Gordon Ryan got that rear naked choke on Gary Tonin, and then Lachlan Giles got the heel hook on Patrick Audio. Moving on to the semis, Buchecha beats Ali by submission, and then Gordon Ryan with a 3-0 or a submission win over Lachlan Giles with that rear naked choke, and then Gordon Ryan defeats Buchecha in the finals, where Buchecha was just very tentative the whole time, very timid. Only really wanted to pass from the outside, wasn't really all that committal on a whole lot of his attacks from top, and as a result, gets the penalty scored against him. Gordon Ryan had that nice sweep anyway before points had counted, so really no question about it. Ryan definitely grappled better than he did in that match and deserved that win.